coffee in Kim Taeho's cup had gone cold hours ago, but he kept sipping it anyway. The bitter taste helped him stay awake during the long night shift aboard the research vessel New Seoul. Outside the small window of the communications room, stars stretched endlessly in all directions. Like tiny diamonds scattered on black cloth, Taeho rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the computer screen. The green text glowed softly in the dim room. He had been updating crew status reports for the past 3 hours, and his fingers moved automatically across the keyboard. Name, rank, duty status, health condition, relationship status, the same. Information over and over again for all 200 crew members. Lieutenant Kim Taeho, Communications Officer. Active duty, healthy, single. He paused at the last word. Single. It had been true for the past 2 years. Ever since his girlfriend back on Earth decided she could not handle dating someone who spent months in deep space. The breakup still stung. Sometimes, especially during quiet nights like this when he had too much time to think. Taeho shook his head and continued typing. This was not the time for sad thoughts. He had work to finish before his shift ended in 4 hours. The crew manifest needed to be updated and transmitted to Earth Command by morning. The next entry belonged to Engineer Nam Woo-jin. Taeho knew. Nam well. They often played cards together in the recreation room. Nam was married to a teacher back on Earth and talked about her constantly. Taeho typed the information quickly. Lieutenant Nam Woo-jin, Chief Engineer, active duty, healthy, married. The list continued. Dr. Lee Soyoung was single like him. Captain Park Dong-woo was divorced. Commander Yu Minho had a girlfriend waiting for him on Mars Colony. Taeho typed each entry carefully, making sure every detail was correct. But he was getting tired. Very tired. His fingers started moving slower, and he had to read each line twice to make sure it was right. The coffee was not helping anymore. Maybe he should take a short break and walk around the ship. No, he decided. Better to finish this first. Only 50 more entries to go. Taeho continued typing, but his mind started to wander. He thought about his small apartment back on Earth. He thought about his mother, who worried about him every time he left for a mission. He thought about whether he would ever find someone who could accept his career choice. His fingers kept moving while his mind drifted. Type check, move to the next line. Type check, move to the next line. The routine was so familiar that he could do it without thinking. That was when he made the mistake. Instead of selecting the internal crew manifest system, his tired fingers clicked on the wrong icon. The Galactic Communication Network opened. Up instead, it looked almost the same as the crew system, with the same green text and the same input fields. Taeho did not notice the difference. He typed his own information again. Updating his personal status as he always did at the end of these reports, Lieutenant Kim Taeho, Communications Officer, active duty, healthy. Single dot, then he pressed the send button. The message disappeared from his screen, transmitted instantly across space through the quantum communication relay. But instead of going to the crew database on Earth, it went out into the vast network that connected thousands of alien civilizations across the galaxy. Taeho yawned and closed the program. He did not see the small notification that appeared. For just a moment in the corner of his screen, message broadcast to Galactic Network Sector 7G through 12M. The notification vanished before he could read it. He finished the real crew manifest an hour later and sent it to Earth Command through the proper channels. Then he made himself a fresh cup of coffee and settled in for the remaining 3 hours of his shift. Everything seemed normal. The ship hummed quietly around him. The stars looked the same as always. The radio chatter from other human ships in the area was routine and boring. Taeho had no idea that his simple status update was traveling faster than light toward the dark edges of known space. In the Necropolis fleet, ancient computers that had been silent for centuries suddenly came to life. The massive undead dreadnought called Eternal Sorrow received the transmission and analyzed it according to protocols that were older than human civilization. A being declaring themselves single and available, for casting their location across space. This had not happened in 3,000 years. Deep in the ship's cold halls, Lady Hyjin opened her eyes. She had been in meditation, as she did for most of each day, trying to remember what it felt like to be alive. The sudden alert from the ship's systems broke through her. Thoughts like thunder, she stood gracefully and walked to the communication chamber. Her pale feet made no sound on the metal floor. Her long black hair moved like smoke around her shoulders. Once, she had been a princess on a world that no longer existed. Now she was something else entirely. The message appeared on her screen in glowing letters, human male, announcing his availability to the galaxy. Humans were new to the galactic community, barely noticed by most of the ancient races. But Lady Hyjin had heard stories about them. They were young and vital, full of the kind of life energy that she had not felt in millennia. According to Vorthok law, any eligible being who broadcast their status across space was issuing an open courtship challenge. It was an ancient custom. From the days when her people still lived and breathed, the law had never been changed, even after death claimed them all. Lady Hyjin smiled for the first time in 50 years. She pressed her pale hand against the communication panel and felt the cold metal warm slightly under her touch. Somewhere out there was a living being who had called out to the universe. Whether he knew it or not, he had just proposed to her. She turned and walked toward the command center. Her footsteps began to make sound as excitement brought more energy to her undead form. The other nobles would need to be informed. Ships would need to be prepared. A courtship was beginning, and she intended to win. Back on the new Sol. Tejo finished his coffee and checked the time. 2 hours left in his shift. He looked out at the peaceful stars and thought about getting some sleep when his replacement arrived. He had no idea that in the darkness between those stars, something ancient and powerful was coming for him. Something that would change his life forever. Captain Park Dongwoo was drinking his morning coffee when the alarms started screaming throughout the new Sol. The cup slipped from his hands and shattered on the floor of his quarters, sending hot liquid splashing across his boots. He had been a ship captain for 15 years, and he knew the difference between routine alerts and real danger. This was definitely real danger. He grabbed his uniform jacket and ran toward the bridge. The corridors were filled with crew members rushing to their emergency stations. The lights had switched to red alert mode, casting everything in an angry crimson glow. Report, Park shouted as he burst onto the bridge. Commander Yumino looked up from his station with wide eyes. Sir, we have multiple contacts approaching our position. Very large contacts. They appeared out of nowhere about 3 minutes ago. Park dropped into his captain's chair and studied the main screen. What he saw made his blood turn cold. 5 massive ships were moving toward them through space. Each one was at least 10 times bigger than the new Sol. They looked nothing like any human vessel he had ever seen. The ships were black as night and covered with strange spikes and towers. They moved without any visible engines, gliding through space like hunting sharks. Green lights pulsed along their hulls in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Distance? Park asked. 2,000 kilometers in closing, reported Lieutenant Jung Boram from the sensor station.
Ow!
Sir, these readings don't make sense. The ships are showing massive energy signatures, but they're also registering as partially transparent to our scanners. What does that mean? I don't know, sir. It's like they exist and don't exist at the same time. Park felt sweat forming on his forehead. The new Sol was a research vessel, not a warship. They had basic shields and a few small defensive weapons, but nothing that could stand against ships this large. Communications, try to contact them, he ordered. Tejo's replacement, Lieutenant Kim Yoo-jin, was already working at the communications panel. I'm sending standard greeting messages on all frequencies, sir. No response so far. Keep trying. Navigation. Can we outrun them? Negative, sir, called Chief Pilot Lee Sang-woo. They're moving faster than our maximum speed, and they're not showing any exhaust signatures. Can't tell how they're propelling themselves. The largest of the alien ships suddenly stopped directly in front of the new Sol. It was so close that it filled their entire view screen. The hull was covered with symbols that seemed to move and shift when looked at directly. Green fire flickered in what might have been windows. Sure, Yoo-jin called out, his voice tight with fear. I'm receiving a transmission. It's coming through on frequencies we didn't even know existed. I'll put it on speakers. A voice filled the bridge. It was female and spoke perfect Korean, but there was something wrong with it. It sounded like it was coming from the bottom of a deep well, hollow and echoing. Greetings to the vessel New Soul. I am Lady Hajin, of House Eternal, First Blade, of the Vorthok Empire. I have come to accept the courtship challenge issued by Lieutenant Kim Tae-ho. The bridge fell silent. Every crew member turned to look at each other with confused expressions. Courtship challenge? Park whispered. The voice continued. According to the ancient laws of my people, when an eligible being broadcasts their availability, across the galactic network, it constitutes an open invitation for courtship. I have accepted this invitation and claim the right to pursue Lieutenant Kim Tae-ho according to Vorthok customs. Park felt his stomach drop. Where is Lieutenant Kim? He asked quietly. He finished his shift an hour ago, you reported. He should be sleeping in his quarters. Wake him up now. While they waited for Tae-ho to arrive, the alien voice spoke again. I will now board your vessel to establish the courtship arena. Do not be alarmed by my appearance or that of my servants. We mean no harm to those who do not interfere with the courtship process. Wait, Park said into his communicator. Need to discuss this? There may have been some kind of misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, the voice replied coldly. The challenge was issued and received. The law is clear. The temperature on the bridge suddenly dropped by 10 degrees. Frost began forming on the metal surfaces. The lights flickered and dimmed. Then something impossible happened. A figure materialized in the center of the bridge. It looked like a woman, but she was floating 3 feet above the floor. Her skin was pale as snow, and her long black hair moved as if she was underwater. She wore elegant robes that seemed to be made of shadow and starlight. Behind her, more figures appeared. These looked like soldiers, but their armor was ancient and decorated with bones. Their eyes glowed with the same green fire that covered. Their ships, the crew reached for their weapons, but found they could not move. Their hands were frozen at their sides by some invisible force. Lady Hyjin looked around the bridge with curious eyes. Fascinating, she said. I have not seen living beings in their natural environment for many centuries. You are all so warm and bright. She turned to Captain Park. You are the leader of this vessel, are you not? I am pleased to meet you. I promise that no harm will come to your crew if they do not interfere with the courtship customs. What exactly are courtship customs? Park managed to ask through teeth that were starting to chatter from the cold. I must prove my worthiness as a mate by demonstrating my ability to protect and provide for Lieutenant Kim Tae-ho. This involves combat trials, gift-giving, and displays of power. It is quite romantic by our standards. At that moment, Tae-ho stumbled onto the bridge wearing his sleep clothes and looking completely confused. He stopped dead when he saw the floating woman surrounded by undead soldiers. Are you Lieutenant Kim Tae-ho? Lady Hyjin asked, floating toward him. Ah, yes. But what? Tae-ho could not finish his sentence. Lady Hyjin smiled, and her smile was beautiful and terrible at the same time. I am Lady Hyjin. You called out to the universe last night, declaring yourself available for courtship. I have traveled across the galaxy to answer your call. I think there's been a mistake, Tae-ho said weakly. There is no mistake, she replied. Your transmission was received by our fleet computers. The courtship laws are ancient and binding. Will now establish the arena where I can properly demonstrate my affections. She raised her hand, and the entire cargo bay of the New Soul began to change. The walls stretched and expanded. The air filled with green mist. Strange plants began growing from the metal floor. The courtship arena is prepared, Lady Hyjin announced. Now I will begin the first trial by eliminating any threats to your safety in this region of space. She turned to her soldiers. Search the local space for hostile forces. Bring me their ships as offerings. Captain Park realized with growing horror that they were dealing with beings who possessed technology far beyond human understanding. And somehow, because of a simple mistake, they were now at the center of an alien courtship ritual that could destroy them all. This is going to be a very long day, he muttered under his breath. 3 days had passed since Lady Hyjin transformed the cargo bay into what she called a courtship arena. Taeho stood at the entrance, looking at the impossible space that had once been a simple storage room. The walls now stretched up into darkness that seemed to go on forever. Strange purple flowers grew from surfaces that should have been metal. The air smelled like winter rain and old books. "You do not have to be afraid, lady," Hyjin said from behind him. Her voice was softer now than when she had first arrived. "I would never hurt you." Taeho turned to face her. She was sitting on what looked like a throne made of black crystal, but her posture was relaxed, almost casual. For the first time since meeting her, she looked less like a terrifying undead warrior and more like a person. "I'm not afraid," he lied. "I'm just confused. This whole situation is very strange." Lady Hyjin tilted her head to one side. "Strange how?" "Well, on Earth, when people want to date someone, they usually start with coffee or dinner. It's maybe a movie. They don't transform spaceships and bring armies of undead soldiers." "What is coffee?" she asked with genuine curiosity. Taeho blinked in surprise. "You don't know what coffee is?" "I have been dead for 3,000 years, Lady Hyjin replied matter-of-factly. "Many things have been invented since then." "What is this coffee?" "It's a drink. It's warm and bitter, and it helps people stay awake. Most humans drink it every day." Lady Hyjin's eyes lit up with interest. "Warm. I remember warmth. Would you show me this coffee?" 20 minutes later, they were sitting in the ship's small kitchen. Taeho had made 2 cups of coffee, though he wasn't sure if Lady Hyjin could actually drink anything. She held the warm cup in both hands and stared at it with wonder. "I can feel the heat," she whispered. I had forgotten what that was like. She took a small sip and made a face. "It is very bitter." "Most people add sugar," Taeho said, pushing a small container toward her. Lady Hyjin added several spoonfuls of sugar and tried again. This time she smiled. "Better. This is a pleasant ritual. Do all humans do this together? Pretty often? It's a social thing. Friends meet for coffee. Families have coffee in the morning. People on dates go to coffee shops. Dates. That's when 2 people who like each other spend time together. To get to know each other better?" Lady Hyjin nodded slowly, like courtship, but without the combat trials. "Right. Without the combat trials?" They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Taeho found himself studying Lady Hyjin's face. When she wasn't trying to be intimidating, she was actually quite beautiful. Her features were delicate and refined, like artwork from an ancient culture. "Can I ask you something?" Taeho said. "Of course. What were you like before you died?" Lady Hyjin's expression grew distant. "I was the youngest daughter of King Namgil. My world was called Seorek Prime. It was covered in mountains and forests. Trees would change colors with the seasons, and the air always smelled like pine and flowers." She paused to take another sip of coffee. "I was supposed to marry a prince from a neighboring world to strengthen an alliance. Instead, I chose to become a warrior when our enemies attacked. I fought in the great battle that decided the fate of my people. What happened? We lost. Everyone died. The entire planet was destroyed by weapons that turned our atmosphere into poison. I died leading a charge against the enemy's command ship." Taeho felt a deep sadness wash over him. "I'm sorry." "Why are you sorry? You were not even born yet." "It's just something humans say when someone tells us about something tragic. We feel bad for each other, even if we can't fix it." Lady Hyjin stared at him with fascination. "You feel bad for me? But you barely know me. Doesn't matter. What happened to you and your people was terrible. It makes me sad to think about it." Something strange happened then. Lady Hyjin's eyes, which had been glowing with cold green light since she arrived, began to dim. Temperature in the room, which had been uncomfortably cold, started to warm up. "I had forgotten," she said quietly, "that living beings could feel sympathy for strangers." She reached across the table and touched Taeho's hand. Her fingers were cold, but they felt real and solid. The moment their skin made contact, she gasped and pulled back as if she had been burned. "What happened?" Taeho asked. "I felt something," she whispered, staring at her hand. "When I touched you, I felt warm. Not just physical warmth, but something else. Something I have not experienced in 3 millennia. looked up at him with wonder and fear in her eyes. "What are you?" "I'm just human," Tejo said, confused. "No," Lady Hygiene shook her head. "Humans are not just anything. Your species is remarkable." Over the next hour, she told him about the Vorthok Empire, how they had been the most powerful civilization in the galaxy before their destruction, how they had been brought back as undead beings to serve as eternal warriors, how they had spent thousands of years conquering worlds and fighting enemies, but never feeling joy or peace or love. "We exist," she explained, "but we do not live. We remember what emotions were like, but we cannot feel them. We are shadows of what we once were." "That sounds lonely," Tejo said. "Lonely." She repeated the word like she was testing how it sounded. "Yes, that is exactly what it is. I had the word, but I had forgotten what it meant." She reached out again and carefully touched his hand. This time, she did not pull away. "When I touch you, the loneliness goes away for a moment." "How is that possible?" Tejo didn't know how to answer. He was just an ordinary communications officer. He had never been special at anything. Somehow his simple touch was affecting a being who had lived for thousands of years. "Maybe," he said slowly, "being human is more special than we realized." Lady Hygiene smiled, and for the first time, her smile looked genuinely happy instead of frightening. "I am beginning to understand why I was drawn to your message. There is something about your species that calls to us, something we lost long ago." "What's that?" "Hope," she said simply. "You still have hope." Meanwhile, in the depths of the Eternal Sorrow, other undead nobles were taking notice of their lady's strange behavior. Word was spreading through the fleet that something unprecedented was happening. The humans were affecting Lady Hygiene in ways that should have been impossible, soon. This news would reach the highest levels of the Vorthok Empire, and everything would change once again. The darkness between the stars suddenly filled with light as the largest ship anyone had ever seen emerged from hyperspace. It was icily 50 times bigger than the Eternal Sorrow, and its hull was covered with golden spikes that pulsed with energy. Ancient symbols carved into its surface glowed like small suns. Captain Park felt his knees go weak as he stared at the massive vessel on his main screen. "What is that thing?" he whispered. Lady Hygiene appeared on the bridge without warning, her face pale with what looked like fear. "The Imperial Throne ship," she said quietly. "Empress Rahi has come." "Is that bad?" Tejo asked. He had been spending most of his time with Lady Hygiene over the past week, and he had never seen her look worried before. "Very bad," she replied. "The Empress does not leave her throne world unless something threatens the entire empire. She must have heard about what has been happening between us." "What exactly has been happening between us?" Tejo asked. "Before Lady Hygiene could answer, a new voice filled the bridge. This voice was different from Lady Hygiene's. It was older, colder, and carried the weight of absolute authority. "All vessels will prepare to receive the Imperial presence. Lady Hygiene will report to the throne ship immediately. The humans will remain where they are until further notice." Lady Hygiene bowed her head. "I must go. Please do not do anything to anger her while I am gone. Empress Rahi is not as patient as I am." She vanished, leaving the bridge in worried silence. 2 hours later, Lady Hygiene returned. Shaken, which was disturbing since Tejo had never seen anything frighten her before. "What did she want?" Captain Park asked. "To test you," Lady Hygiene said. "The Empress has decided that humans are either a great opportunity or a terrible threat to our empire. She wants to know which one before she decides what to do with your species." "Test us how?" Dr. Lee So-young asked. She had been studying Vorthok technology and biology for the past week, trying to understand how their undead biology worked. "She is going to give you a challenge," Lady Hygiene explained. "If you succeed, she will consider an alliance with humanity. If you fail, she will order your entire species to be destroyed before you can become a danger to us." The temperature on the bridge dropped several degrees as everyone absorbed this information. "What kind of challenge?" Tejo asked. Lady Hygiene looked directly at him. "You must help us solve a problem that has been killing our people for over 1,000 years, something we call the decay." She waved her hand, and images appeared in the air above them. The images showed Vorthok beings, but something was wrong. With them, their bodies were falling apart, turning to dust even as they moved. Their glowing eyes were dim and fading. The decay is a disease that affects only the undead, Lady Hyjin continued. It turns us back into ordinary corpses. We lose our consciousness, our memories, our power. We become nothing. How many of your people have been affected? Dr. Lee asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. Millions, entire fleets, have been lost. Worlds that were once strongholds of our empire are now graveyards. Our greatest scientists have studied this problem for centuries, but they cannot find a cure. Engineer Nam Woo-jin leaned forward. Why do you think humans can solve it if your own people can't? Because, Lady Hyjin said, the decay cannot affect living beings. And yesterday, when Taeho touched my hand, something happened that should have been impossible. For a few moments I felt alive again. Truly alive, not just undead. She looked around at all of them. The Empress believes that your life energy might be the key to stopping the decay. But first, you must prove that you understand it. Captain Park stood up straighter. What do we need to do? You will be taken to a research facility on the third moon of this system. There, you will work with our scientists to study samples of the decay. You will have access to all of our data and equipment. If you can find even a small breakthrough, the Empress will be impressed. And if we can't, Lady Hyjin's expression grew sad. Then I will be ordered to kill you all quickly and painlessly before the fleet moves on to destroy Earth. The next day, a small Vorthok transport ship carried the senior officers of the New Sol to the research moon. The facility they found there was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was built inside a crater that had been covered with a dome of energy. Inside, the environment was carefully controlled to prevent the decay from spreading. Dr. Lee was amazed. By the Vorthok laboratory equipment, her technology could examine matter at the quantum level and manipulate energy in ways that human science was only beginning to understand. This is incredible, she said as she studied readouts from a decay sample. Your instruments can see things that our best equipment can't even detect. The Vorthok scientist working with her was named Lord Jaewook. He had been studying the decay for 300 years without success. Can see the disease, he explained, but we cannot understand why it affects some of our people and not others. We cannot predict when it will strike or how to stop it once it begins. Engineer Nam was working with the facility's technical staff, trying to understand how Vorthok energy systems worked. He discovered that their power sources were based on what they called death energy, the same force that kept the undead beings conscious and active. This is fascinating, he told Captain Park during their first break. Their entire civilization runs on the energy released when living things die. But somehow the decay is interfering with that process. Meanwhile, Taeho was working directly with Lady Hyjin and several other Vorthok nobles serving as a test subject for experiments involving life energy. Every time he touched one of them, strange things happened to the monitoring equipment. Look at this, Dr. Lee said, pointing to a readout. When Taeho makes physical contact with Lady Hyjin, her energy signature changes completely. It starts looking more like a living being than an undead one. That's impossible, Lord, Jaewook protested. The undead cannot return to life. It violates the fundamental laws of necromancy. Maybe your laws are incomplete, Dr. Lee suggested gently. It was Engineer Nam who made the first real breakthrough. While studying the power systems, he noticed something that the Vorthok scientists had missed. The decay isn't really a disease, he announced during their third day at the facility. It's a weapon. Look at these energy patterns. They're not natural. Someone created this thing deliberately. The room fell silent as everyone stared at his data.
Oh, a weapon designed to attack the undead specifically? Dr. Lee added, understanding.
Immediately, someone wanted to destroy your empire by turning your immortality against you. Lady Hyjin's eyes began to glow brighter with anger. Who would do such a thing? I don't know, Nam replied. But whoever it was, they're probably still out there. And if we can figure out how this weapon works, maybe we can figure out how to stop it. For the first time in 1,000 years, The Vorthok had hoped that the decay could be defeated. And it was 3 ordinary humans who had given them that hope. The research facility's alarms began screaming at 3 in the morning. Tejo woke up in his small quarters to see red lights flashing outside his window. Through the transparent dome above the crater, he could see explosions lighting up the darkness of space. He ran to the main laboratory where he found everyone gathered around the communication screens. Captain Park looked grim as he watched the battle unfolding above them. "What's happening?" Tejo asked. "We're under attack," Dr. Lee replied without looking away from her instruments. Unknown ships appeared about 10 minutes ago and started firing on the Vorthok fleet. On the main screen, Tejo could see dozens of strange vessels attacking the Eternal Sorrow and the other Vorthok ships. The enemy ships looked like they were made of pure light, changing shape constantly as they moved through space. Lady Hijin materialized beside him, her face dark with anger. "The Shi'Tar Collective," she said. "We should have known they would come." "Who are the Shi'Tar?" Captain Park asked. "Ancient enemies of all physical life," Lady Hijin explained. "They are beings of pure energy who believe that both living and undead creatures are mistakes that should be corrected. They have been waiting for our empire to weaken so they could destroy us completely." Another explosion rocked the facility. Through the dome, they could see one of the smaller Vorthok ships breaking apart under enemy fire. "They followed the decay signature," Lord Jaewook said, understanding suddenly. "The weapon was not just meant to kill us slowly. It was meant to mark us so the Shi'Tar could find us when we were weak enough to defeat." "How long have they been planning this?" Engineer Nam asked. "Probably since the day they created the decay," Lady Hijin replied. 1,000 years of preparation for this moment." The communication system crackled to life with Empress Rohi's voice. "All personnel will evacuate to the deepest levels of the facility. The enemy has weapons that can penetrate our shields. This facility will not hold for long." "We need to get out of here," Captain Park said. "No," Dr. Lee said firmly. "We're too close to a breakthrough. Give us a few more hours and we might be able to find a way to stop the decay completely." "We don't have a few more hours," Lady Hijin said, as another explosion shook the building. "Then we worked faster," Tejo said. Everyone turned to look at him in surprise. "Lady Hijin, you said that when I touch you, you feel alive again. What if we could make that effect permanent?" "That's impossible," Lord Jaewook protested. "Is it?" Dr. Lee asked, suddenly excited. "Tejo, what if you're right? What if we could find a way to make the undead truly alive again? The decay can't affect living beings." "But how would we do that?" Engineer Nam asked. "The same way the Vorthok were brought back from death in the first place," Dr. Lee explained rapidly, "but in reverse. Instead of using death energy to create undead beings, we use life energy to restore them to full life." Lady Hijin stared at her. "The amount of life energy that would require would be enormous. It would kill whoever provided it." "Not if we spread the load," Tejo said. "What if all the humans worked together? What if we linked our life energy through the Vorthok technology and shared the burden?" "That's incredibly dangerous, Captain." Park said, "We have no idea what it would do to us." "But it might work," Dr. Lee said. "And if it does, we could save the entire Vorthok Empire." The facility shook again, more violently this time. Cracks appeared in the dome above them. "We have to try," Lady Hijin said. "Even if it kills me, it's better than letting my people fade away into nothing." "It won't kill you," Tejo said, taking her hand. "I won't let it." The moment their skin touched, every piece of equipment in the laboratory began glowing brighter. The energy readings spiked beyond anything they had seen before. "Incredible," Lord Jaewook whispered. "The resonance between human life energy and Vorthok death energy is creating a completely new type of force. Can we amplify it?" Engineer Nam asked. "Yes, Lord," Jaewook said, working frantically at his controls. "If we modify the facility's power grid to channel human life energy instead of death energy, we might be able to create a field that affects every Vorthok being in the system." "Do it," Lady Hijin ordered. The next few minutes were chaos as the Vorthok scientists reconfigured their equipment while explosions continued overhead. Dr. Lee worked with them to calculate the proper energy levels while Engineer Nam helped. "Modify the power systems ready," Lord Jaewook announced. "But I must warn you," We have never attempted anything like this before. The results could be unpredictable. The current results are that we all die, Captain Park said. I'll take unpredictable. Taeho looked at Lady Hyjin. Over the past 2 weeks, his feelings for her had grown into something deep and real. She was brave, intelligent, and despite her fearsome power, she was also kind and gentle. The thought of losing her now was unbearable. Are you ready? He asked. I have been ready for 3,000 years, she replied. They joined hands in the center of the laboratory. Dr. Lee, Engineer Nam, and Captain Park placed their hands on the modified energy collectors. Lord Jae-wook activated the system. Power flowed through them like lightning. Taeho felt his life energy being drawn out of him and channeled through Lady Hyjin into the facility's transmitters. The sensation was overwhelming, like being turned inside out while flying through a star. Lady Hyjin began to change before his eyes. Her pale skin gained color. Her cold flesh became warm. Her glowing green eyes shifted to a natural brown. For the first time in millennia, she drew a breath. I can feel my heart beating, she whispered in amazement. The energy field spread outward from the facility, touching every Vorthok ship in the system. Throughout the fleet, undead beings suddenly found themselves truly alive again. They could feel warmth, taste food, experience emotions that had been denied to them for centuries. But the transformation came with a price. The human crew members collapsed as their life energy was drained. They were still alive but barely above them. The battle was changing. The newly alive Vorthok warriors fought with a passion and creativity they had not possessed as undead beings. The Sheeter, who had planned their attack around fighting emotionless undead creatures, found themselves facing opponents who could think and feel and adapt in ways they had not expected. The Shi'Tar are retreating, came Empress Rahi's voice over the communication system. Whatever you have done down there, it has saved us all. Taeho tried to stand but found he could barely move. Lady Hyjin knelt beside him, her newly alive face filled with concern. You gave me life, she said softly. How can I ever repay that? Just be happy, Taeho replied weakly. That's all any of us wanted. She leaned down and kissed him gently. It was the first kiss she had experienced as a living being in 3,000 years, and it was perfect. 3 months later, Taeho stood on the observation deck of the New Sol and watched something that no human had ever seen before. Outside the large windows, construction ships were building the first joint human Vorthok space station. The workers were a mix of human engineers and newly alive Vorthok craftsmen working together to create something entirely new. It's beautiful, Lady Hyjin said, joining him at the window. She was wearing a simple blue dress instead of her ancient robes, and her hair was tied back in a practical style. She looked like any other young woman except for the wisdom in her eyes that came from living for thousands of years. Hard to believe it's only been 3 months since we first met, Taeho replied, putting his arm around her shoulders. Hard to believe I've been truly alive for only 3 months, she said, leaning against him. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. The transformation had affected more than just Lady Hyjin. Every Vorthok being in the fleet had been changed from undead to living. They could eat food again, feel physical sensations, experience emotions with full intensity. For many of them, it was overwhelming at first. Empress Rahi had adapted better than most. She had declared the change a gift from the universe and had immediately begun restructuring Vorthok society to account for their new status as living beings. The rigid military hierarchy of the Undead Empire was being replaced with something more flexible and democratic. Captain Park to all senior officers came the announcement over the ship's communication system. Please report to the main conference. Room Taeho and Lady Hyjin made their way through the corridors of the New Sol. The ship had been expanded and modified over the past months to accommodate their new Vorthok allies. What had once been a simple research vessel was now the flagship of a joint exploration fleet. In the conference room, they found Captain Park, Dr. Lee, Engineer Nam, and several other crew members gathered around a holographic display. The display showed a map of the local galaxy with hundreds of glowing dots scattered across it. What are we looking at? Taeho asked. The future, Captain Park replied with a smile. These dots represent worlds that have requested to join our alliance. News has spread about what happened here, and it seems like half the galaxy wants to be part of what we're building. Dr. Lee pointed to one cluster of dots. These are worlds that have been affected by similar weapons to the Decay. They're hoping we can help them find cures. And these, Engineer Nam added, indicating another group, are civilizations that want to trade technology and knowledge with us. The Shi'Tar attack was a blessing in disguise, Captain Park continued. When they retreated, they left behind some of their technology. Dr. Lee has been studying it, and she thinks we can use it to help other species who have been targeted by similar weapons. Lady Haijin studied the map carefully. My people spent 3,000 years as conquerors, she said. Perhaps it is time for us to become healers instead. Over the following weeks, the joint fleet began visiting the worlds that had requested help. Each mission was different, but they all followed the same pattern: human creativity and compassion, combined with Vorthok power and ancient knowledge, to solve problems that had seemed impossible. On a world called Nuvum Prime, they helped a civilization that had been turned to stone by an ancient curse. Dr. Lee discovered that the curse was actually a type of suspended animation, and Engineer Nam figured out how to reverse it using modified Vorthok resurrection technology on the mining world of Pharaoh 7. They encountered a species that had been infected with a plague that made them unable to feel emotions. Lady Haijin, who had experienced the return of emotions herself, was able to guide them through the healing process. Each success brought more requests for help. The alliance grew larger and stronger as more species joined them. But it was never just about the advanced technology or military power. What really attracted other civilizations was the spirit of cooperation and hope that the humans brought to everything they did. You know what I've realized? Tejo said one evening as he and Lady Jin walked through the arboretum that had been added to the new soul. The space was filled with plants from dozens of different worlds, all growing together in harmony. What? Lady Hajin asked.
We're
Not really explorers anymore. We're gardeners. Lady Haijin laughed, a sound that still amazed her every time she heard it. Gardeners? Think about it. We go to places where things are broken or dying, and we help them grow again. We plant seeds of hope and cooperation, and we help them flourish. I like that, she said. Gardeners of the galaxy. They paused beside a fountain where water from Earth mixed with bioluminescent liquid from the Vorthok homeworld, creating patterns of light that danced across the surrounding plants. Do you ever miss being undead? Tejo asked. Lady Haijin considered the question seriously. I miss the certainty, she said finally. When I was undead, I never had to worry about getting hurt or sick or old. I never had to fear death because I was already dead, but now I have something better than certainty, she said, taking his hand. I have hope. I have love. I have the knowledge that every day is precious because it won't last forever. And I have you, Tejo said. And I have you, she agreed. 6 months after that first accidental transmission, Tejo sat down at his communication station to send a message to Earth. The message would take weeks to reach home. But he knew his family would want to hear about everything that had happened. Dear Mom and Dad, he began typing. I know my last few messages have been hard to believe, but I have more incredible news to share. Lady Haijin and I are officially engaged. I know what you're thinking. How can a human marry someone who used to be undead? But love finds a way, even across impossible differences. He paused and looked out at the stars, where dozens of ships from different species were traveling together toward their next mission. I never expected my life to turn out this way. I was just a communications officer on a research ship, and now I'm part of something that's changing the entire galaxy. All because I made a mistake and typed single in the wrong place. He smiled as he continued typing. But maybe it wasn't really a mistake. Maybe it was exactly what was supposed to happen. Sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. The universe is vast and full of wonders I never imagined. But the most wonderful thing of all is that I get to explore it with someone I love, surrounded by friends from species we didn't even know existed a year ago. I'll write again soon. Give my love to everyone at home. Don't worry about me. I'm exactly where I belong. Tejo sent the message and leaned back in his chair. Through the window, he could see Lady Hejin working with Dr. Li and some Vorthok scientists on their next project. She looked up and waved at him, her smile bright with the joy of being alive. He had typed single by accident, but he had found so much more than love. He'd found his purpose among the stars.